Hello everyone. So in this tutorial we are going to take a look at how to start a Spring Boot project. Spring Boot is an web framework using Java. So using Spring Boot we can develop multiple websites, even microservices. So Spring Boot is a pretty famous framework for building web-based applications. So let's start with this. In this first tutorial we're gonna only look at how to start a Spring Boot project. So to start a Spring Boot project, there are various methods to start a Spring Boot project. So these are some features in the Spring Boot. They don't care about it right now because we are just starting to get familiar with Spring Boot. So in this start, while first of all, to start a Spring Boot project, obviously most of the developers use Spring Initializer to start a Spring Boot project or Spring CLI. Other than that, there are specific IDEs. So IDEs are specific plugins to start a Spring Boot project. So regarding the Spring Boot has a dedicated IDE called Spring Boot Tools. So if you use that IDE, you can start a project very simply by going to a new project and start a simple Spring Boot project with the dependencies you have to add. Dependencies are based on what you're gonna use, so do not care about dependencies right now. So basically we are gonna set up a basic Spring Boot project and let it run. That's it. So let's start with the Spring Initializer. It's the simplest way to start a Spring Boot project. So first go to your browser and just search Spring Initializer. That's it. So you're gonna get a page for the Spring Initializer in the Spring official website. So in this window you can start a Spring Boot application very easily. So first you're gonna choose a dependency manager for your project. The available ones are Maven and Gradle. So I'm gonna go with Gradle. Maven, both are fine. Gradle is far more easier than Maven to manage your dependencies. So the choice is up to you. We can talk a lot more about what's the differences between Maven and Gradle in a separate tutorial. So in this tutorial, to keep it simple, I'm going to choose Gradle. So choose whatever the version you prefer. Going with the latest version is the good thing. So here group is something when we create a normal Java project, we will name something called a package. Group is like that. So you can name it whatever you want, as far as the name doesn't get too weird. So I'm going to keep it .com example. So this artific is what's our project name. So don't get confused by this name artific. It's just our product name. Product mean our project name that we are going to build. So the name is also the project name. So the both of it should be separate. Or I don't think it should be separate. Whatever you want, if you type right. So the artifact is the project name you're gonna define. So artifact and the this part, the artifact is the project name what we are gonna build. So give whatever the name you prefer. So artifact and the name both are the project name and the package project name. So you have to give a one name for both of this, right? Type whatever. So I'm gonna go with the demo here also. So this is our package name. .com example demo. So just don't care whatever it is. And packaging, most of the Java applications we are using packaging using the jar format. Word is also fine, but for the simplicity we are going with the jar and choose your preferred Java version. So I am still using Java 8 because most of my legacy projects are based on Java 8. So I'm not yet upgraded. So feel free to use whatever the version you installed in your PC Windows or Ubuntu. So it's up to you. Just after choosing all of these, here we have a window to add the dependencies. So dependencies mean what are the services that we wanna start using while initializing the project. Of course we can add the dependencies later, but some are the initial dependencies we can edit right here to get it out of the box. So it's so much easy to generate a Spring Boot project in the Spring initializer. So what are the dependencies what we want right now? So right now we are going to build a Spring Boot web application. So initially, while clicking the dependency, you can see a bunch of dependencies, so it's a lot confusing if you are not familiar with Java or Spring Boot. Even if you are a little bit familiar with Java Enterprise Edition, you can easily understand what's going on here. So right now we are going to build a simple web API. So web API means we're going to build some endpoints. So for that we have to use the Java Spring Web. So Spring Web, here you can see the clear description for this: build web including RESTful application using Spring MVC. So this Spring Web comes in with inbuilt Apache Tomcat as a default embedded container. So basically, to run a web application we need a server. So if you are familiar with Java Enterprise Edition, we have to download a separate server and add it to the Java Enterprise application to run it as a web application. So if you are familiar with Tomcat or Glassfish servers, we mostly use Tomcat or Glassfish in Java Enterprise application, but Spring Boot comes inbuilt within server. So we are going to use Spring Web to get that server. And other than that, Spring also comes with an inbuilt database. Yes, you are right. So we don't have to use separate database like Postgres, MySQL or MongoDB or something. We can use it, but for this project to start up we can use the Spring inbuilt database system. So it's not that much hard. So here in this section of dependencies, there's a section called SQL. In that SQL we have various type of SQL injections, that means dependencies to choose from, but keep it simple. Just we're going to choose Spring Data JPA. JPA means Java Persistent API. So here we can check the description: persist data in SQL, store with Java Persistent API using Spring Data and Hibernate. So we are going to choose this service. Choose it. Also we need another service to run our database. So to run our database, we just need, we don't want to go for NoSQL now, so we just need the Apache Derby database. Here it is. This was the database that was implemented entirely in Java and comes out of the box with the Spring Boot. So while using this Apache Derby database, we can straight out of the box focus on the implementation rather than connecting the database and connecting the servers and creating tables or something like that. So we are going to choose this also, and after choosing this you can just generate a project. So the generating is done. You can get a zip. Just open the zip. Where is my zip? Can't find it anywhere. Here is it. So basically just extract it, you're gonna get a project, and just open. You can use whatever the ID you prefer. I will teach the tutorial in both VS Code and the IntelliJ also. So let's wait for a moment. Do not open this. Before opening this, if you are using VS Code, we can create a Spring Boot application right in the VS Code using VS Code as a separate plugin to start a Spring Boot application. Just search for Spring. Here we have a create a Gradle project or Maven project. Just choose create a Gradle project. So right now we have our little demo Spring Boot application here. We are going to open it using an IDE and run it. But before that, if you are using IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate Edition, we can create a Spring Boot project right in this IDE. So it's very easy than Spring Initializer, but it's gonna cost more because the IntelliJ Ultimate version, I don't remember the price right now. So just take a look at prefer. If you are using Ultimate Edition, it will be easy. Just go to the open your IDE and go to the start a new project, and here in the option you have option called Spring Initializer. It's same thing I explained in the spring.io website. Using this, just select whatever the dependencies you want, and then your Java version and other things, and if you click next, you can open a Spring Boot application. Other than that, I'm gonna open the application we created in the Spring Initializer in the IntelliJ IDEA. So we are not going to create a new project, we are going to open a project. I don't remember the path actually. I think it's not under desktop, it should be in the downloads. Yeah, in the downloads, here we have a demo app. So let me open it. So first we are opening, if you are using an IntelliJ IDEA, it's pretty easy, because while we are opening the application, the IntelliJ IDEA will automatically run the Gradle build in the background. So you can see it right here, it's updating the indexes. So IntelliJ IDEA basically scan all the files, and it has an ability to know that we are intended to run a Spring Boot application, so it will automatically build the Gradle in the backend. Here we can have a notification called Gradle build script fun in the demo or import. So we are not going to do anything about it, we just want to close it. And here we can see our project is opened. And if you are familiar with Java project structure, you can get easily with Spring Boot, but Spring Boot doesn't have a particular structure, but developers have their own styles. But most of the time we are going to stick to a standard procedure, like standard structure. So in this tutorial we are not going to build any packages or folders or structures like this. We are just going to bootstrap our application, that's it. Okay, let's look at the src folder, and inside the src we have a main and the test. So test is, of course you are familiar with any other frameworks. Test is, we definitely have to write test cases while building a web application or any other IoT application or any other thing. We definitely have to write test. We are not going to take a deep look into the test, so let's take a look into the main. In the main we have Java. Inside the Java, this was the package structure we have created, .com, example and demo. Inside the demo we have the demo application Java file. Yes, now we have the main file open. So if you are familiar with Java, of course you guys will know the main method is required to run the Java application. And what's it, the project JDK is not configured, so we have to configure SDK inside the IntelliJ to get started with. So I have to set up an SDK, so I'm going to go with Java 8 here. So in this example, this was the main thing that's come out of the box with the Spring Boot. So right now we can run this application, but we have to finish until the scanning files to index are completed, because IntelliJ is building a Gradle build in the background. So we have to wait right till the IntelliJ downloads the specific dependencies for this project and build it. So beforehand, so here we can see the IntelliJ is building our project. So we can use this Gradle build started, and in the terminal if we go to the build section, and we can check the started grading default. So at the first time it's gonna get a few more minutes to build the Gradle, because it was only about the first time. From the frequent build, from the second third build, it's gonna get fast. So let's wait till the build is finished. As you can see now, the build is finished now. It will say build successful in 2 minutes. Eventually it's not going to take 2 minutes each and every time you build. It's going to take a few seconds, like 2 or 3 seconds. But the first build is because the ID have to download the required dependencies, so it will take about 2 to 3 minutes. So don't worry about it. Let's just go to the main thing that we created. So this was the only Java file then come out of the box with the Spring Boot, the main file. So in this you can see the Spring Boot application. So this annotation called add Spring Boot application is one of the most important annotation, because this was the annotation that used to bootstrap the Spring Boot application we just created. So this was basically a basic Java main class. You can see it was a basic Java main class. There are no any difference. The only difference is we are importing the Spring application from the Spring framework, and also we are importing the Spring Boot application annotation from the Spring framework. That's the only difference. So after you can see the build is finished, we can see the run button. It's available here. So right now we can run the project. It will start running. Nothing to worry about, because we have the main method, and the main method is annotated with the Spring Boot application. So we can run the application. Okay, I click done. So we can check the status of run in the build, I think. Yes. So if you check in build output, it starts. So basically our gonna takes some it's I think. Okay, right now you can see build. You can see the console, the application in few seconds. You can console here, and we are at various tasks. To take a look at these starting. So the important thing is here, we have to check it. It started the test demo application in 29 seconds. So that time doesn't matter, because it's based on your CPU performance and the ID performance. So don't care about the time. And here we can see it's initialized the JPA entity manager. So the database, inbuilt database we are selected, and most of the some Spring Servlet or some other things. The important thing to notice here, we are using Tomcat server to run this application. So here we can, the application is right now running. So we can see clearly it says Tomcat started on port 8080 with HTTP with context path or something else. So this was the thing we have to consider, because the server was started in the port 8080. So 8080 was the default port Spring is gonna run. If you want to change the port, you can of course change it with the Spring. There's a file called Gradle properties. You can change the 8080 port to a different port. So for the simplicity, we are not going to change the port right now. So we are going to check if the application is running correctly. So we have to check the application is running or not. In the console itself says the application is running. So to check it, we have to go to the browser and just go to the port 8080 localhost. So if we go to the port 8080, yes, so the application is running right now. It's giving an error page because we don't have any web pages linked, and also the application, it clearly says the application has no explicit mapping for error page. So we don't have an error page either, so it will go to the default Spring Boot error page. So the application is successfully running. Let us make a simple API to test if the application is correctly running. Yes. Here you can see there are various things like IntelliJ ID suggesting something. So right now what we are going to do is we have to check whether the application is running correctly. We already checked the application is running, but it's giving an error page. So let's just return some string or something else to check whether it works perfectly. So I'm going to open new Java class. I hope you guys are already familiar with Java. So I'm going to just use a demo API. Yes, I'm going to use a Java class. It's not an interface, it's just a class. So in this class, I'm going to create a simple endpoint to check if this one works or not. So I'm going to create a simple method. It's of course it's a public method. Let's create a public method. Public, I'm going to create a string method, because I'm going to return a string in the web page to check if this works or not. So let's call the method get string, and if you are familiar with Java syntax, this must be simpler for you. If not, I suggest you to learn some basic of Java before diving into Spring Boot. So we're gonna return a basic string. Hi, this is Spring Boot running. So we're gonna see this string in a web page while loading. So are we gonna see that? No, we are not gonna see it right now because we haven't mapped it to a URL. So to map it to a URL, we're gonna specifically specify the endpoint name somewhere in this application to run. So let's just do that. So yeah, it's not going to be that hard because Spring is basically the concept. Spring Boot concept is basically most of the Spring Boot is depend. So we have a method here, we have a class, and we have a method, and we have a string to return. But how we are going to show this in our web application? That's the thing. So Spring is easy, pretty easy. It's actually very easy because we have separate annotations to do this. So we don't have to do like, we don't have to convert something, we don't have to convert the data at this string into JSON to show it. Spring automatically do this for us. So we only have to do two things. First of all, we're going to make this a REST controller because we are building a REST API. As of course, the purpose of this tutorial is to build a REST API. So we have to make this a REST controller. How are we going to make this? It's pretty easy. Just REST controller. We do have a suggestion here, REST controller. That's it. So it will the IDE will automatically import the REST controller. If you are using Spring VS Code or some other Eclipse like IDEs, use a specific plugin, or else you have to import this one manually. So this was from the Spring Boot framework itself. So if you are going to using a REST controller, basically now this class has become the REST controller. So right now we have to stop the server because Spring Boot doesn't do hot reload like Flutter Django. We have to stop the server. So what happens if we run the server? Are we going to get the response back in this page? No, we are not going to get the response because we didn't point to this endpoint. We didn't point this method to a particular endpoint to run. So the Spring Boot application is gonna run fine, but we are not gonna get the output in the browser. So what we do to get it? We have to map an endpoint for this method. How we are going to do it? Again, using the annotation. So annotations are basically the simplest thing to use in the Spring. You just don't have to remember every annotation. You can check the documentation every time you want. So the annotations are basically not only appended. The annotations are not only for the Spring Boot. Actually, it's from the Spring framework itself. So we have ton of annotation. So right now we are only starting an application, so we are going to use the simple annotation here. What we're going to use to map it? Just use request mapping. So we're going to get a suggestion here, request mapping. Yes, in the request mapping we're going to pass the endpoint we're going to call. So I'm going to pass just demo. That's it. So it's going to work fine. So while building complex API like not about complex, while basic APIs like post, put, delete, and if you are going to build a CRUD application, it will be different. But right now we only have to show this string in a browser to make sure our Spring application works fine. So I am going to map this function using the request mapping annotation, and I'm gonna name that endpoint as demo. So ATSD is a default domain localhost. So after that I'm gonna put this demo in our URL, and we're gonna get this thing in our browser. So we do have to run the application. Let's see, the application started running, I think. Yeah, Spring, and it's gonna make the whole process, but this time it will be faster than the previous one. So the application, yes, we got the message the application was started on port 8080. So we're gonna go to the browser and we're gonna go to the port 8080. 8080 is still giving the error because we have mapped it to the demo. So when we go to the demo, yeah, so our application is working perfectly fine. We get this thing, hi, this is Spring Boot running. So the application is running. So this is enough for this tutorial. Actually, we created a Spring Boot application using the Spring initializer and of course using the IntelliJ IDEA. Feel free to prefer whatever the method is easy for you, and you can use whatever the IDE you want. But this was IntelliJ was built in features for Spring Boot, so it must be easy to get started with IntelliJ Ultimate version. You can't do Spring Boot in the commercial version, so it's up to you. And after that we created a simple Java class. This was a Java class file, and we created a simple class and a simple method, and we mapped that method into a URL endpoint and returned a string to make sure our application is running perfectly. So the only annotation we used here is a REST controller. This was used to make this class a REST controller, because to view the data in a browser we somehow have to convert the string into a JSON format. That's what we are doing here using this REST controller annotation. In the annotation request mapping, what we are doing is we are mapping that URL to that endpoint. So we do have to specify if a browser goes for this URL, the localhost will be a main domain. If your browser goes for demo/demo URL, we have telling the Spring Boot application just return this thing. I mean this string. That's it. So in the future videos we are gonna take a look at some more into Spring Boot, and we are gonna completely build an API, a set of CRUD application API using the Spring Boot. That means a get API and a post, put, delete, and of course a get API using the ID to point it to a particular resource. So we are gonna do all that using Spring Boot. So of course in the future videos we are gonna learn a lot of Spring Boot, and Spring Boot is one of the famous framework right now, also has high demand for jobs wherever in the world you are. So hope you got to understand that. If you have any questions for the starting a Spring Boot application and using a basic thing, just hit me up in the comments. Thank you for watching.